So this probably won't be this probably be about 30 minutes or so. During the time that we have, I'm gonna kind of walk you through that before, and I think it'll be particularly helpful if you've never really had to, you've never really had a job offer for a professional job before. Maybe you don't understand benefits at all and what your employer may offer. And also, we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the art, if you will, of negotiating, because we do encourage you to negotiate, and we'll talk about how you can do that as well. So with that, feel free to chat in any questions or any audio problems, because I've had this week, for whatever reason, I've had a little bit of an off connection sometimes, and I sound like a chipmunk. So if I sound like a chipmunk, please tell me, and I can try to fix that if possible. Let me just see here. There we go. Okay. So just kind of go over quickly what kind of the objectives are for tonight. With salary, I'm going to show you some resources for helping you understand your worth. Kind of seeing, understanding the market for your job or the position that you're applying for, and having you go in with some information about roughly what a fair salary would be. I'm going to also show you some cost of living calculators so you can understand, all right, well, I got an offer in this city and it looks really good, but then when I go into the cost of living, I'm realizing, well, maybe it's a lot more expensive to live there than I thought, and that might have me rethink what a fair cost of living would be in that area. So that's something else that we'll go over. And then we'll also go over some basic benefits too. There are a lot of benefits a company may offer for you. And I won't be able to probably go over every one that a company may offer, but I'm going to try to go over benefits that are commonly offered. If you have more specific questions, that'd probably be something we could set up like a one-on-one appointment to do as well. And then negotiating. So that's what we'll kind of end with tonight, and I'll go over some just general tips on negotiation. It's kind of like if you were in our session earlier on interviewing, it's one of those things, the more you get exposed to it, the easier it gets. But it is good to kind of think about what would negotiation look like, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. So let's go first talk about salary. So there's a few helpful tools out there to get a good sense of what a typical salary might be in the field that you're working in. I think a good place to start for just general ideas on salary would be the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So this is actually a government resource. So if you just Google like Occupational Outlook Handbook, it'll bring up this. This is a federal database of kind of by jobs. It has a lot of information. Probably the most helpful in this context would be you could search for the job title that you're applying for. I'm just going to put in something so we can demonstrate how it works. So let's say you were applying for public relations specialist. Sorry if you can hear my kids in the background. They got home a little while ago and they're a little wild, so sorry about that. So I think I pulled up a marketing or a public relations specialist here. I think something to kind of keep in mind is the job titles. So one of the first things that came up when I did that was like a marketing manager. Unless you're applying for a position that is a manager, I wouldn't look at that as like a salary to go off of. Usually you're going to be at more of an entry level position, and that marketing manager salary is probably that might be a job you can do once you get more experience, but the salary for that is probably not going to line up with what you could expect for more of an entry level job. So kind of just be conscious of the job titles. But what it does for you right here is it kind of gives you just a basic like median pay. Then they also have this area here where you click on pay, and it gets a little bit more detailed. So kind of break it down, what this public relations specialist. Then it kind of breaks it down into the broader category of media communications workers. And then it looks at the total of all occupations. So it kind of sees how it compares there as well. And then kind of by sector where people are working, it breaks it out that way too. Now this is nationwide. So it doesn't factor in, a big cluster of those might be in one city, and that city might have a higher salary than others. So that's always something else to keep in mind as well. So this is a good general starting point. Um, but I would say if you want to dial it in a little bit better, there are some better tools. Glassdoor salaries is a really good one as well. If you just Google Glassdoor, you can look at jobs. Probably the first page is going to take you to jobs. You'll want to go over to salaries, and then you can search a company. So I'm gonna just research a company we all know, and you could search the company you're applying for. And I'm just looking at Google in New York City. And then what it's going to show you here is, and the way this works is people anonymously put in their salaries into Glassdoor. That's how it gets this database. Not every company will have a salary, particularly maybe smaller companies, but it is a good resource. And even if it doesn't have your company, you could also search for by position, and it would show you kind of positions in a certain geographic area, what the average salary for that is too. So let's say I was going to be, a software engineer. And then it's going to kind of break it down. I think you can also break it down by experience level, 0 to 1 years. You could break it down by where they are, kind of see that out too. So it does allow you to kind of break things down too. I know we talked, I think, last week about you can use this for searching for interviews too. Something else I would also recommend. But Glassdoor can be a useful tool in that regard of kind of helping you narrow in on a company or at least a position, and then seeing in that geographic area what is kind of almost like the going rate. I think it's really important to make sure you use the years of experience though. That might help filter it down a bit more for you. And then another resource, or I guess like a folder of resources, if you will, under our popular jobs websites. This is, I can show you how to get to this because that'd probably be more helpful. Kind of back out and show you how I got here. If I go under Platts Life and Career Development Center, job postings and career tools. And then once I'm here, under targeted job websites, click go to targeted job websites, and it brings you to this folder. And I think I'm just looking at popular job websites. That's where I was. Once I am here, if I scroll down, there's salary and cost of living websites. There's a few of these that are helpful. I mean, all of these are helpful in different ways. I'm trying to think of the one that I think it's this one. I want to show you like a cost of living calculator as well. And that can kind of help you, maybe if you're thinking of, you maybe applied to a job somewhere, you got an offer and you're trying to evaluate, like, is this going to be livable? Like, am I going to be able to, it sounds really good maybe from where I'm coming from, but I don't know what the cost of living is going to look like there. So let's say you were in Plattsburgh. You're moving from Plattsburgh, New York. I might have to, let's see. I don't know if Plattsburgh comes out from a metro area. It's too small. Burlington, Vermont does come up. Our cost of living is a little lower here in Plattsburgh than Burlington, but just for the sake of argument, I'll kind of just demonstrate this. Let's say you wanted to move to Los Angeles. And let's say in your job in Los Angeles, you got offered 50,000. You're trying to kind of base off, like, that sounds like a lot maybe in Burlington, but what does that look like in Los Angeles? It'll show you that kind of a similar lifestyle would be like 56,000 in Los Angeles. If you wanted as 50,000 would be in Burlington. Keeping in mind, cost of living in Burlington is going to be more than Plattsburgh. But what it does do is kind of breaks down like what the median home price is, um, what like median apartment rent is, how much cost of food is in different places, how much like general lifestyle costs are. So it's pretty, it's pretty it breaks it down by quite a bit. And again, this isn't, I think this is a good like tool, like it, in the sense that is it going to be completely accurate for your circumstance? Probably not, but at least kind of gets the ball rolling. I would even recommend like taking it even one step further. Especially if you were serious about a job offer in somewhere that wasn't near where you are, and looking at rent costs through like different resources that we actually have a session on that too. Like just looking at what is the average rent price, what is the you know other expenses that you're going to have, how does that look different where you're moving, so just really have a good sense of that. But those are kind of some things here as well. Other items to consider when you're evaluating an offer. So this is really still salary related. Like one, kind of looking at, these things and saying like, will I be able to live on this salary? And a good way to get started on that is actually creating a budget. So there's actually a budget tool that I've recommended before to folks. It's actually something I use myself. There's a lot of them out there. If you kind of just search for free budgeting tools, there's quite a few. This one's called Every Dollar. You can just use the free version. And basically what you do is I have it on my phone, and I plug in like what I estimate my average, or what I estimate my monthly expenses to be. And you could kind of use that, like looking at, okay, I'm thinking of moving to this city, and an average apartment is going to cost this much. Average other things are going to cost this much. My food I estimate to be about this much. And kind of give you a clearer picture of like, can I actually live on this salary? I think that's important to kind of keep in mind. I think budgeting is a good practice to get into, particularly, better to start good habits now. So it's something to kind of consider, as well as just kind of getting used to creating a monthly budget. But also take into account taxes as well. You might have an offer that doesn't take into account like the taxes that are going to be taken out from that. And sometimes for students, that's like a new thing to think about. So the offer might be $40,000, but that doesn't mean your take-home pay is going to be $40,000. The government's going to take some of that as well. So again, if you have any questions about salary, feel free to send them in. I'll kind of move on to benefits. So retirement benefits are probably a big thing to consider when you're looking at a job. Many companies may offer a 401k or a pension plan. I'd say 401k is probably the most common. If not, this is not as common, but some companies may not offer anything, particularly if it's a smaller company. And you may have to start something that's called an IRA or an individual retirement account. Either way, start something. So for a lot of folks, you kind of think, well, it's like really far off. I'm just starting. I don't want to start thinking about retirement yet. But believe me, your future self will thank you that you started something earlier, even if it's only like a little bit you're contributing. That little bit will add up significantly more over time than if you were to start even like 10 years from now. It'll make a big difference. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind. There's a video I want to show you. In this, I think they're talking about an IRA, but a lot of the concepts are similar to even a 401k. And I'll kind of break it down afterwards, but I do think it's kind of helpful to kind of give you a sense of like how this would work, especially if you've never really thought about it before.
Free. Free.
Gonna watch the ad. skip the
What
ad.
if I told you I knew a way to dodge taxes on a chunk of...
Let's restart that. Maybe like buffering.
What if I told you I knew a way to dodge taxes on a chunk of... What if I told you I knew a way to...
I'm gonna wait a second here. Sorry, my internet is a little sluggish for this. I'm gonna see if I close out of some things if it helps. There we go. We'll be okay now.
What if I told you I knew a way to dodge taxes on a chunk of your paycheck? Or how about an investment opportunity that will never pay a penny of taxes on the growth, no matter how big it gets? Sound too good to be true?
No, we're not talking about some offshore account in the Cayman Islands. This is the amazing tax shelter of the IRA, a government-created program designed to incentivize you to save more for your future self.
In 1974, Congress wanted a way to incentivize the country to start saving for their own retirement and rely less on government programs or company pensions. Their result was the creation of the first IRA.
The I stands for individual, meaning you don't get to co-own an IRA with someone else, and it's not dependent on a company offering it to you like a 401k. The R stands for retirement, meaning you promise not to withdraw the money until you reach a certain age. And the A can either mean account or arrangement, according to the IRS. Contrary to popular belief, an IRA isn't an investment itself with a set interest rate or statistics. It's a holding cell for your investment of choice.
An individual retirement account can be set up at nearly any bank or investment company and can hold investments like mutual funds, stocks, or ETFs. But an IRA doesn't have to be an account. Individual retirement arrangements allow you to apply the same tax benefits to an investment like a piece of land or a small business. Some folks have even used this arrangement to tax shelter dairy cows, a car wash, and a habanero pepper farm. As long as you play by the rules, you can get pretty creative about what you choose to invest in.
IRAs can be broken down to two primary styles, traditional and Roth. The traditional IRA is the OG IRA. When you're going traditional, you're allowed to save up to $6,000 a year, or $7,000 if you're over age 50. And as long as you meet the criteria, any money you save into a traditional IRA is tax deductible. Translation, the more you save, the less taxes you'll owe this year.
And since you're paying less taxes, you have more money to potentially invest in your IRA. Essentially, it helps you boost up the amount you save every year. And as the years go by and your account grows, you don't have to report the growth on your taxes. But when retirement arrives and it's time to pull the money out, the amount you withdraw gets taxed as ordinary income.
If you're a freelancer or own a small business, you qualify for some special variations of the traditional IRA. The first is the SEP IRA. SEP stands for Simplified Employee Pension and can be ideal for self-employed people. The SEP will allow you to raise your $6,000 funding limit to the lesser of $56,000 or 25% of your compensation. That's a huge potential tax deduction each year. But beware, if you have any employees, you'll probably have to fund their IRAs at the same rate as your own.
And if you work for or own a small business, the simple IRA is kind of like a traditional IRA blended with a 401k. Available to companies with 100 employees or less, the $6,000 funding limit is raised to $13,000 and offers a savings match incentive to workers, usually a 3% matching contribution. So whether you own or work for the small business, the SEP and Simple can help you level up a basic traditional IRA.
Then there's the Roth IRA, the cooler younger brother of the traditional IRA. Making its debut in the 1990s and named after Senator Bill Roth, the Roth IRA flips the tax benefit. Instead of getting a tax deduction on the income you put in now, the capital gains, interest, and growth can be withdrawn tax-free in your golden years with no limit. This is super attractive to younger investors since their investments can rack up so much compound growth over their lifetime, there's a potential boatload of taxes they can avoid.
Let's say you started maxing out your Roth IRA at $6,000 a year every year starting at age 25. And let's imagine that money gets invested in index funds that grow at an average rate of 8% per year. If you did just that until you reached 65, you'd have around $1.67 million.
Under ordinary circumstances, whenever you profit from an investment, you need to pay taxes. But thanks to your arrangement with the government, your Roth IRA hooks you up big time. In our simplified example, your gains account for 1.43 of your $1.67 million. And assuming you owed a 15% capital gains tax on those gains, you'd normally be on the hook for over $214,000 in taxes. But thanks to the Roth, that number is zero.
A couple important things to keep in mind when investing through an IRA. First, you can't touch the money until age 59 and a half, or you'll get hit with taxes and a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Though there are a few exceptions to this rule, like paying for college or buying a home. And contributions or deductions might be limited or eliminated if you and or your spouse aren't working or have a 401k or other retirement plan through your job. And even non-working spouses can save into their IRA if they choose.
So which IRA is right for you? Luckily, you don't have to limit yourself to only one. Many people have multiple IRAs as long as the total investment doesn't exceed your yearly cap. The factors that might make a Roth, traditional, SEP, or simple IRA a good fit are unique to you, your age, your income, your goals.
Speaking with a tax professional and a financial planner about your situation will always be a safe bet when deciding which IRA to house your investments of choice. They can help you make sure you play by all the rules of the arrangement and don't overlook anything.
But one thing's for sure, the advantages of saving into an IRA early and often are truly too good to pass up.
And that's our 2 cents. Thanks to our patrons for keeping 2 cents financially healthy.
Click the link in the description if
All right, so a lot thrown at you there. I do think some of the concepts are helpful. It's likely a company you would maybe be working for would either offer what's called a 401k or a 403b. 403b is more for like nonprofit organizations. But a lot of the concepts of the IRA that they were talking about are very similar. I just couldn't find a good video about a 401k. That broke it down that well. But I guess the concepts I would take back are you're going to likely have some kind of retirement offered. You certainly want to do some research about the plans that are offered. Some things to kind of keep in mind is they should each kind of what's called like I think it's called like an expense ratio or something, but it's like how much it's going to cost you each year to have that. Whatever you sign up for, some are much lower than others. And also, I guess, kind of taking a look at what makes sense for me now. What point of life am I at now? How much am I able to contribute? Some employers, as an incentive, may offer what's called like a match. So let's say they offer a match up to 10%. What that basically means is they'll match up to 10% of your salary, contributing into whatever funds you choose. They'll match that as well. That's kind of a common arrangement. So, that's in some ways, like if you were to, let's say 10% amounts to $200 out of every paycheck or something, they're going to also match that $200 going into your retirement as well. And that can be hard to pass up. And I would recommend, if it's going to be financially viable for you, take as much of that as you can. Probably some of the best advice I could give is if you are able to, when this time comes where you're researching, get advice from a certified financial planner. We actually had a session. You can take a look at it on our website under events with a financial planner, and she's actually an alum of Plattsburgh, and she was giving it kind of just a general advice about how to start off on the right foot. And the video of that is available to watch under our special events page. And I would encourage you to do that too. Just some really helpful advice there. Some other benefits that you are likely going to be offered are health benefits. Navigating the fun world of health benefits is, if you've never done that before, will be fun. And I'm kidding there. So there's likely going to be different plans you're going to be offered with different costs. And it can be a little complicated, not going to lie. So you're going to kind of want to look at one, kind of assess how do I feel about myself, but also knowing like sometimes things come up that you don't plan for. So it's kind of striking that balance of what am I going to be comfortable with. Usually they're going to show you an amount that's going to come out of your check to help you pay for, you know, that the plan that you choose, and the employer is going to contribute some amount as well. And there's differences. So there's some plans are called copay plans, and that what that basically looks like is every time you go to the doctor, it's kind of like a flat cost. So it could be like $25, and then the insurance picks up the rest. Those plans cost more to you up front. So like you're coming out of your check, it's likely going to be more. And then there may also be deductible plans where the insurance won't kick in until you spend a certain amount each year on your medical costs. And that amount will vary depending on the plan you choose. The higher the deductible, probably the cheaper the insurance plan will be. But to keep in mind, you have to fork out that much more money to get the insurance to kick in. And that's really, I'm kind of explaining it in a very simplified way. It's likely going to be a little bit more complicated than that. And you'll want to make sure before you choose a plan, you kind of understand it with the human resources department should be able to explain that pretty well. So you feel good about the choice that you make. Also keep in mind that sometimes health insurance doesn't start the day you start working. So, you kind of have some options there. If you have it from an employer now, you might be able to continue it at a cost. Or you might just risk it for the little bit of time that you have in between the start of one and the beginning of another. That's kind of up to you and what you're comfortable with there. There's also something called flex spending plans. And those can be for both healthcare and dependent care. So what flex spending plans do is they take money aside before taxes. So basically it looks like you're making less money to the government, and it puts it in this account that you can use for either healthcare costs or dependent care costs, which might be like daycare for a child or things like that. And then you use that money throughout the year to pay for those expenses tax-free. So the advantage is you get the money tax-free. The disadvantage is if you don't use it in that calendar year, you lose it. So you want to make sure if you sign up for something like that, you're going to be able to use it during that calendar year, which can be tricky, particularly for some of the health costs. You might, some of that's unknown. So I would budget for more than known in a flex spending plan, and then anything kind of outside of that, you may pay with tax. And not all companies will offer these, but I wanted you to be exposed to them and know that they do exist. I use a dependent care plan right now because I have 2 kids in daycare, and it does help. It does save me some money on my taxes. And then the last thing for benefits that I'll talk about right now are educational savings plans, which kind of ironic given that you're likely just coming out of college. And what an educational savings plan is to be saving for a child for a child is college. So like I'll use myself as an example. I have 2 kids. They both have an educational savings plan. What that basically is I have money taken out of my paycheck, again, tax-free, and it goes towards my children's college costs. Or it doesn't have to be just college. It could be any kind of like post-secondary education. So it could be like vocational schools, things like that. So it's a helpful way to kind of start planning early. I started both of my kids. They were like 3 months old when I started it. So, just doing a little bit each week and it adds up and it's money I would not have likely just said, oh, I'm going to put, this X amount aside. When it happens automatically, I don't think about it. And it's helpful in that way. So that's something else you might see. And when the time is right, that's something else I would consider looking into as well. So a lot of fun talking about benefits. I would definitely say, a lot of it is probably not super interesting, not the most exciting stuff to read about, but you want to make sure you read through everything you're signing up for and you understand it. It's important that you understand it because ultimately it's going to affect you. So make sure you go in with a clear head about what you're signing up for and what you're doing. And, you know, we can help with that kind of on a one-on-one basis to help you maybe understand a little bit more. But ultimately it's your decision to make. So from that, I'll kind of go into the last section on negotiation. So, and feel free to chat in any questions if you have any. So as far as negotiation goes, what that kind of looks like, we talked last week about interviewing. You have your interview. You might learn a little bit more about kind of some of the benefits and things like that, but they're likely not going to talk about a salary until you have a job offer. So that's going to be probably like a phone call. Call you up and be like, hey, we'd like to offer you the job. Here's kind of like what we're thinking on salary. Here's what we're offering on benefits. And you have a couple options of what you can do at that point. The path of least resistance is just saying, yes, okay, I accept it. I generally would not recommend that for a couple reasons. I would recommend instead that you take a little bit of time to think about it. Say, yeah, that's great. I'd like to think about it. Can I have a day or a couple days to think about it? Don't take a ton of time to think about it. I'd say no more than 3 days, just because that's not really fair to them either. But it is fair to take some time to think about it. But part of the reason I want you to take some time to think about it is so then you can kind of do your research to start negotiating on that salary. So I want to start with a little video. It's the same group that did the first video. And this time they're talking, in this video, in the context of this video, they're talking about asking for a raise. But I think it's still really helpful for the idea of negotiation for an incoming job. The concepts they're talking about translate almost exactly to what it would be like for negotiating during like the hiring process as well. So we'll talk about it. We'll kind of debrief after. I'll show you it. We'll debrief after.
This is Nora, a smart snoring solution that you want to have in your.
Picture a very nervous 17-year-old Julia. My heart was pounding, my mouth was dry, and my hands were sweaty because I was about to walk into my boss's office and ask for my first pay raise. Somehow, I managed to negotiate my rate from $7.25 an hour to $7.75. 10 years later, when I found myself in a similar position, you'd think I might have felt a bit older and wiser going in, but I didn't. Negotiating your pay isn't something you get a lot of practice doing.
And it's not like they teach it in high school or college, and most people don't even like to talk about how much they make with anyone, even their boss. A study in Australia found that only 48% of men and 32% of women thought their pay was even up for discussion.
But your income is the most powerful tool that you have to grow your financial stability. So you owe it to yourself to exert some control over it.
The first step in getting a pay raise is to decide to ask for one. In a perfect world, your boss would notice all your hard work and say, hey, that employee's a real benefit to this company. I should increase their salary, and I'll give them a company car and a corner office while I'm at it. But this just doesn't happen in the real world. Your boss might even recognize your value, but he or she probably has their own budget to worry about, so they're unlikely to increase their expense without you initiating the conversation.
However, before you do that, you've got to prepare your case. How are you especially valuable to the company? What achievements or successes have you had recently? Have your responsibilities expanded beyond the original job description? Any extra training or education relevant to your work? It's best not to compare your pay to other employees. That's not considered professional. And don't include personal needs like my rent went up or my dog got sick. Employers will only care about your individual merit. And remember that just doing your job is not a good enough argument. After all, you already agreed to do that when you first took the position. You have to show that you're more valuable now than you were when you were hired.
Although you're arming yourself with arguments, keep in mind that it's not a battle. Replacing an established employee is very expensive and time-consuming, so if you're a good worker, your boss probably wants the same thing you do, for you to be happy enough to stick around. Unless they're an abusive jerk, in which case, would getting a raise really make you happier? Maybe you should be looking for a different job instead.
Have a specific number in mind. Researchers at Columbia Business School found that workers were more likely to get a raise if they asked for a precise amount, probably because they seemed more confident about their worth, but you do have to be realistic. Most pay raises are between 1% and 5%, and you can use websites like PayScale or Glassdoor to find out the market rate for your position in your area.
Timing is key. If the company is in the middle of a big project and your boss is stressed out, you might want to wait for things to calm down before asking for a raise. Plan your request soon after you've completed a big achievement or shown that you can successfully handle more responsibilities. And if you've recently taken a vacation or missed a deadline, you should probably allow some time to reestablish your reliability. Asking at the right time will only make it easier for your boss to say yes.
Even if your employer thinks you deserve it, they just might not have the ability to increase your salary, which is why you should be ready with alternate options. Salary only typically accounts for about 70% of an employee's total compensation, which leaves lots of room on the negotiating table for other benefits and perks. And you can get creative. There's gym membership reimbursement, professional development funding, commuting expense coverage, more flexible work hours. Heck, maybe it's just a cubicle that's as far as possible from the obnoxiously loud coworker. Come up with the top 3 things you would change about your job and see if they're amenable.
When you've got your presentation planned out, it's time to rehearse. The thought of explaining why you deserve more money makes most people want to crawl under a rock, but it's important that you appear confident in your self-assessment. So have a friend or family member sit down with you and just get some stumble-throughs out of the way. The mirror isn't gonna cut it here. You need to sit across from a human being who can ask you questions that your employer might bring up during your talk. And don't ask for feedback from your rehearsal partner until you've gone through it at least a couple times.
And lastly, be prepared to hear no. Even if you walk out of your boss's office with nothing more than what you went in with, it's not a defeat. You have successfully communicated your expectations about your career and shown your investment in the company long term. Trust me, your employer will remember these things the next time you're up for review or a promotion becomes available.
You'll also be giving yourself practice at asking for what you want, something that is difficult for a surprising number of people, but essential to feeling like you have control over your life.
As my mother-in-law always says, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So there's no harm in trying if you do it with preparation and professionalism. And you won't have to wonder whether you could be making more than you are. And that's our 2 cents.
So yeah, overall, I think a lot of the concepts that they shared there are really helpful. Definitely doing your research, understanding what the amount, the amount isn't likely to probably increase. It's not going to double. I would be very surprised if, say, a job offer was 40 and you asked for 80 and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll give you 80,000." I'd be very surprised by that. So I think that 1 to 5% figure, that's probably pretty accurate. Again, kind of understanding, using those tools I showed you at the beginning to understand your worth a bit. Going into it with the mindset that it's not necessarily a battle, but you're also, I think what they said at the end is you're learning to advocate for yourself. And I think that's important. And it's important to show an employer too that you're not necessarily a pushover, that you will advocate for yourself. And I think you definitely, also with the understanding that it might be a no. And just be prepared for that. A no doesn't mean no job offer. It just means no, this is the rate we're going to pay, and then you have to decide, am I comfortable with that, or am I going to look at another job? And that's ultimately up to you. Um, Definitely practice, like they said in the video as well. It's an uncomfortable topic. No getting around that. So I think that if you practice, it'll be a little bit easier. So I would advise practicing if possible. Um, and those are kind of the main things there with negotiation. I mean, I definitely would recommend doing it. Um, Partially because say your first job out of college, it's going to set you up on the trajectory of your earnings moving forward. So let's say you negotiate, you start that trajectory a little bit higher. So then when you're asking for a raise, the next raise is a little higher, or the next job that you move to, you can negotiate that a little higher. Um, Versus if you didn't advocate for that, you're starting a little bit lower on that trajectory. So that's something else to kind of keep in mind too, is that it can set you up for future earnings too. So those are the main things there. And I guess the other thing they did point out in the video is they might come back like, well, we can't offer more salary, but maybe we can offer other perks or something else that would incentivize you to want to take this job. Because ultimately they offered you the job because they want you with their company, so they're trying to woo you, and maybe they're like, well, we can't move on the salary, but maybe we can offer you something else. And I guess that's another thing to be prepared for too. Um, Maybe it's like flex hours or something else. That's something else to kind of consider as well. So with that, I think that's everything I had for this evening. Yep, everything for the evening. Um, and I guess I will hang out if anyone has any questions. This is the last session in our series for the job search boot camp. We will kind of redo them all over in July and August, starting on July 13th. But it'll be very much just kind of like a reboot of this over again. We're hoping to target new students that haven't seen it the first time, and just kind of help them out in their job search throughout the summer. So again, you're welcome to join us again, or if you missed some of the first ones and you want to see them again on our special events calendar, they are there. But the other than that, that's all for this evening. And certainly reach out to us if you have more individual questions. Um, you can schedule an appointment with us right on our website. It'll say make an appointment right in the top right. You can select a counselor you want to speak to, and you can schedule an appointment with us at any point. So would definitely encourage you to do that, and wish you all the best of luck as you move forward and continue your job search process.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Have a good evening.
You too.
And Becky, I just saw your chat there. I can actually show you on our website where they are if you hang on for a second. Let me just share my screen again. Oh, there we go. Let's keep this. Come on. Sorry. My kids are screaming and it's distracting me a little bit too. Let's see. So under Platts Life, go to Career Development Center. And then under special events, you'll see, I'm going to probably edit this week to kind of take out the ones that were in June. And then you'll see the June 13th starts with resume and cover letter. June 20th is job search tools. July 27th is networking and LinkedIn. August 3rd, interviewing, and then this one again on August 10th. And we have some previous events from the spring. I referenced this kind of financial forum during our session today. It was kind of like just general, like it was a lot more in depth on like the benefits areas, particularly like retirement and things like that. So you can actually watch a video of that, and there's some other ones that we had as well. And those are all just videos you can watch. So I would encourage you to take a look at those too if you were interested. So yeah, definitely RSVP for those events if you're interested. We'll have some emails coming out about them as well. And glad you could join us this evening. Stop the share there. Yeah, they are also in the handshake events too. So on the events page that I just showed you, if you click RSVP, it takes you into handshake to RSVP for the event. So you could just do it right through handshake if you wanted to. But yeah, that's everything. Hope you have a good evening, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Talk to you later.